Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Obviously, I think everybody understands why we're here, and we understand what the subject is. There's been a lot of discussion about gaming in the state of New Jersey, a lot of ping pong going on in terms of what's best for the state of New Jersey and what's going to help revitalize Atlantic City and resurrect our gaming business for the state. We're here today to introduce legislation to ask the New Jersey voters to approve giving the legislature authority to pass laws establishing casinos, no more than 3, in Bergen, Essex, and Hudson. This amendment will allow the legislature to pass laws establishing not more than 3, as I stated. We can't sit by any longer. The history of Atlantic City is one that I was part of. I worked in Atlantic City for over 20 years. I understand the industry from the inside. The business has changed. We've had a tremendous amount of competition in our neighboring states. We've had a downturn in the economy, and that vicious competition has taken over $2 billion of taxable revenue away from the state of New Jersey. It's also created a regional depression in terms of unemployment and businesses that depended on Atlantic City for their survival. Everybody knows to survive in anything, you have to adapt. If you don't adapt, you become extinct and you become a dinosaur. With the loss of this taxable revenue and the value of the properties that have decreased because of the collapse of the industry, when you see properties being sold for 3 and 5 cents per dollar, you have to recognize the problem that Atlantic City has. And that affects the citizens of the city and the taxpayers and also the homeowners and everyone else that depended on the casino industry. Last April, as compared to this April, the revenue was down 16%, even with online gaming involved. The legislature and the governor passed legislation to allow Atlantic City to come out of the doldrums. That was 5 years ago. There was an arrangement made that a moratorium would be placed on the industry. That moratorium is over as far as I'm concerned. This is the beginning of a conversation as to when we're going to, changing the location and allowing the people of the state of New Jersey to make the decision about where they want gaming. The Revel, for example, was a referendum on gaming in the state of New Jersey. It failed bitterly. A $2.5 billion investment reduced to $83 million, closed doors. The original Gold Nugget, which was the Atlantic Club, Trump Plaza, and the Showboat. This is devastating news not only for Atlantic City, but for the state of New Jersey. We have to make a decision in the state government as far as policy. Are we going to stay in the gaming business or not? Those customers that have left our borders and gone to other areas, Pennsylvania and New York, we have to put ourselves in a position to fight to get those dollars back. This is the effort that we're trying to start today. AC needs a funding source. The state of New Jersey cannot afford any more support for that town. There are pilot bills, there are other measures that we've done, but in terms of revitalizing the city, there needs to be an identified funding source. That funding source will be clear once these casinos are in operation. We will dedicate partial money to revitalizing that town. No one, as I said, has the right to change that direction. I had an article I looked at the other day in 1978 where the hope was great for the town, where we had the Governor Burns standing at the crap table with Steve Lawrence, a very famous singer at the time. Thousands of people through their doors. That's not the case today. We talk about transition. The only way a transition is going to happen if we put resources behind it. We have to tie North Jersey to South Jersey economically to end any tension that may exist. I'm going to pass my time over to Assemblywoman Huttle, and she's going to pick it up from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Assemblyman. Obviously, he shares a certain historic perspective and was there really on the front lines of Atlantic City, so I appreciate your advocacy and your movement to get this placed on the ballot. As Assemblyman Caputo said, you know, we've talked about it for a long time. It's time to stop talking and listening to the voters in New Jersey. And for years, our state has shelved the possibility of new gaming destinations to protect Atlantic City. But that strategy has proved ineffective. because more and more dollars are going into New York and Pennsylvania, and yet Atlantic City is still suffering. You know, in recent years, we've seen nationwide gaming revenues increase as New Jersey falls further behind. And I just want to give you a perspective as Chair of Human Services. As Chair of the Human Services Committee, I can tell you firsthand the results of this. Our state has less money in the Casino Revenue Fund to spend on programs for our most vulnerable residents, our senior citizens, and individuals with developmental disabilities. So, you know, the reality is that Atlantic City no longer has a monopoly on gaming, unfortunately, in our region. Anyone knows as you drive up and down the turnpike, as we all do, we see billboards within miles of each other, you know, promoting Resorts World Casino in Queens, which is 40 minutes away from my home in Bergen County, Empire City Casino in Yonkers, which is about 20 minutes away. So we're all reminded every time we drive up and down the turnpike, you know, where Empire City prominently advertises. So if I'm seeing that, you're seeing that, so are thousands of the residents and visitors traveling throughout New Jersey seeing that. So we're losing countless gaming and tourism customers to these newly opened casinos in Pennsylvania and New York. And so we cannot keep ignoring the fact, and it only hurts our state. And as Ralph said, our state as a whole, New Jersey, not South Jersey, not North Jersey, New Jersey. So by providing New Jersey an alternative, we are essentially bringing in new hotels, restaurants, entertainment dollars, and we really need to do this. And I still feel, and I think we all feel, that this is not about North Jersey. This is about the economic future of New Jersey. We can certainly have a thriving Atlantic City, and we can certainly have successful casinos, whether it's in Hudson, Bergen, or Essex counties. But it's not about what I want or anyone else here wants. It's about what the people of New Jersey want, and it's time to really turn this conversation into a legitimate discussion. And so it's time to let the voters decide. And so should New Jersey maintain the status quo, or should we take a really forward-leaping step to create new jobs and build up the state economy? So if we have that opportunity, I believe that we're all here to push New Jersey as a state forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valerie. Raj.
Thanks. Thank you. And Chairman Caputo, you've been at the forefront of this topic for some time.
That.
It's a privilege to be up here with you and with Assemblywoman Huttle. I think that what we're talking about here is coming to the forefront now, and the reason that we as the sponsors needed to act on this is because we've been watching New York and Pennsylvania slowly but surely erode our gaming industry. Now, jobs, 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 jobs. I mean, this plan, if voters authorize North Jersey gaming in these three counties, which are so crucial to New Jersey's overall economic success and which are located in these three counties, in Bergen, Essex, and Hudson counties, we have some of the most prized real estate in the Northeast, in the country, a talented labor pool, and we sit at the heart of major transportation corridors. So if the voters authorized limited, controlled North Jersey gaming in these three counties, we could realize 20,000 permanent, good-paying jobs, maybe 30,000 indirect jobs, and realize billions in additional gross gaming revenues in the coming years. Now, since 2006, we've lost $2.6 billion of gross gaming revenue to Pennsylvania and New York and Maryland and other competing neighboring states. And as a member of the Budget Committee, I'm mindful of the fact that we had to replace these losses and the shortfalls with transfers from the general fund. We can ill afford to do that. But this is not only about helping all of New Jersey as a whole and in its entirety, as my colleagues said. It's about keeping our gaming industry viable and competitive, and it's about helping Atlantic City. I saw a great analysis the other day headlined with Atlantic City is going to go bust unless it stops betting on bets. And it's the truth. And what we're proposing to do, if it's authorized by the voters, is we're going to subsidize the non-gaming development in Atlantic City. And it will directly help AC's recovery in a meaningful and impactful way. And not to mention the economic growth that would result from first-class casinos in Bergen and Essex and my home county of Hudson. And so we could use those assets. We could capitalize in our home counties, capitalize on the proximity of our counties to New York City and surrounding areas, and entice patrons that we're losing right now to our neighboring states. And that's why this is so essential, and we want to start the dialogue. It's a matter of when, not if, and that's why we're here today. And we look forward to working with our colleagues in both houses to move the concurrent resolution forward and hopefully give the voters the option of keeping the gaming industry viable in our state, creating thousands and thousands of jobs, and bolster economic development in the entire state of New Jersey.
Well, now you know why I'm so proud to have these two as co-sponsors, two prime sponsors, Hudson and Bergen and Essex. We represent those three areas. Let me just say this. We talk about the jobs. I believe that those people that have experience in the gaming industry should have first right of refusal for any position that may be created. They have the experience. That occurred, wasn't in that format, but in Atlantic City, many people from Las Vegas came in the beginning to train other employees. So that's a very important part of the process, to offer those positions, especially those that were highly trained and experienced. The other thing is the gaming market. When we talk about the gaming market, there was a study done back in the 90s. I think Governor Florio was governor at the time. And the study indicated that when things were going great in Atlantic City, when they were making billions of dollars, that the town could only hold 9. The casino business is a tough business. You can make a lot of money and you can lose it fast. And if you look at the numbers of these particular casinos that are the 8 remaining, some are making money and some are not. It all depends upon the product that they're offering. That's why we have to be very careful about what type of casino, what kind of proposals are made in the north part of the state, so that we were able to be successful and create a market and also fight. The main thing is to fight those customers that have left us so that we can retain that revenue for the state that we've lost. And we've lost, as Raj said, over $2 billion, which is almost in half of the top number. We're now third behind Pennsylvania in the country. Imagine that. New Jersey, that was #1 at one time. #2 next to Vegas is now 3 behind Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you why they're successful. They moved up and down our borders and took our markets out of here because of convenience gaming. Now, let me explain something. When you talk about convenience gaming, in the 50-mile radius of North Jersey, there are 14 to 15 million people living with incomes that can support this kind of leisure activity. In Atlantic City, because of all the challenges, but even without that, they have 1.5 million people within a 50-mile radius. People go where it's convenient for them. There's no loyalty when it comes to business or fun or gaming. People go where their best interests are being served. So I'm going to open up for questions now. If anybody would like to ask, I'll be very glad to answer them.
Ralph, you've introduced, this is your third, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your third constitutional amendment introduced right now. It's
Right.
gone from 1 to 2 to 3 now, right? So why did you go to 3 casinos? And now you also have, I just read on Politicker, some Central Jersey lawmakers saying, well, what about Central Jersey? I mean, is there any end to the amount of people who want casinos in a limit here, or is 3 it? Is this the...
Well, at this point, it's just 3. And, you know, the reason why is because the population and the convenience of all of those people, I believe that those casinos, if they're proposed and approved by the public, will be successful. Just about the market that is left here, if they were, that revenue was spread among the 3 casinos, if they ever get built, would be successful properties. That's why there's 3. And your question is, I've evolved too. This is nothing new to me. I've been fighting for this for over 6 or 7 years. When we started this effort, people thought it was folly. This has become a reality. Now, the administration now has changed their mind. They're talking about, they've lost their patience with Atlantic City. They realize that there's a financial problem, and they're supporting it. The President of the Senate, whether we agree on the year or not, is also supporting a constitutional amendment. The Speaker is supporting a constitutional amendment. The only thing that hasn't been decided is when, whether it be this year or next year. That's going to be a leadership decision, and we're going to be involved in that decision, the 3 of us and many more people that have an interest in seeing this become successful.
So you mentioned, you alluded to needing to build certain types of casinos and to Revel. What are you envisioning as far as a casino? I mean, are you thinking more along the lines of putting Revel in North Jersey, or something more along the lines of Sugar House?
There's nothing in cement at this time in terms of being firm. The fact is, any developer or anybody that's interested in building a casino is going to have to compete. And the state government is going to have to review those plans and make a decision based upon what they see in the market and what will be appropriate for the market that they're trying to attract. That's not my decision. That's the decision that the regulations and enabling legislation that will follow, that will set up those guidelines to make those decisions. We're opening up the discussion, okay? We're not building casinos, the three of us.
Do you have any revenue estimates?
Revenue estimates, according to some, just on one, they're talking about almost $400 to $500 million for the state.
Ralph,
Taxable.
Corral has offered to pay the Pennsylvania rate of 55%.
Right.
Would your bill tax all three casinos at that rate?
Our bill doesn't talk about taxes, okay? That will follow if this constitutional amendment is approved. There'll be enabling legislation that will follow by other people, probably, people that will be on the budget committee or whatever. They will determine what the tax rate will be. It will not be the same as Atlantic City, I can tell you that.
Be higher than it?
It will be higher than 8, definitely.
What, is it safe to say that the Assembly is taking the lead on this? What conversations, if any, have you had on the Senate side with folks there?
Well, you know, Senator Lesniak has a resolution in, a concurrent resolution. I'm sure Matt saw that. That's the Senate side, but it's different than ours. And all I can tell you is this. There's been so much talk. The three of us have decided that we've got to begin this conversation, because if anything does happen between now and November, it has to be done pretty shortly. We were talking about August 3rd as a deadline. If it doesn't happen now, we're going to continue the conversation, and we're going to go do it as soon as we possibly can.
What's the advantage of limiting it to 3 counties? I thought it was going to be more likely like 6 or 8 northernmost counties. That way, conceivably, if there's a bigger bid.
Look, let me give you a little history. In 1974, when the constitutional amendment first appeared on the ballot, they didn't specify where casinos could be built. It was defeated. People want to know what they're voting for and what they're not voting for. They have a perfect right to vote against it, and they have a perfect right to vote for it, but we have to lay it out and let people understand where those geographic locations are so they can make an intelligent decision. That's the difference.
Assemblyman Paul Fireman is the Boston called the sneaker magnet.
Right.
He's been vocal about wanting to build a casino in Jersey City.
Correct.
How much is your zeal on advancing this issue driven by the fact that he and his wife Phyllis have given $5,000 to your primary election?
Well, let me clear that up. I was for this amendment way before I met Paul Fireman. Okay, so I've been for casino gaming in North Jersey before I met Paul Fireman or Jeff Gorell. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't see anything inappropriate about that.
Well, no one's saying that it's an.
Well, that's the issue that you brought up. I'm just answering you. You know.
Yeah.
I didn't flip from no to yes or from yes to no. I've been consistent on this issue all along, and that's the answer to that.
Could you reiterate a little bit about what the main selling point would be to voters in the southern part of the state?
Jobs and revenue. Jobs and revenue. And revitalization of Atlantic City. Those 3 items. Once the public is educated about how that will affect us as citizens, I believe they'll support it.
And this legislation doesn't say how much, what percentage of the revenue would go to the land?
Not at this point, no. Not at this point.
Does it say anything about
It'll be in the enabling legislation.
And what would be the time frame for actually getting these things up and running in time to provide that kind of lifeline?
Well, we want to move as quickly as we can, but we don't make that decision. There's been other people involved in this process, like the total legislature and the administration. If everybody comes together and reads all the analyst reports on what will work and what will not work, we can make a decision that's above politics and based on good policy for the state. That's what I want to happen. I don't want it to be my way, because I don't want all of that responsibility on me. I want to be able to put the best minds together and to review and forensically look at any report or any analyst that has conducted a study on this issue and make the right decision for the people of the state.
Well, how soon do you think one could actually be up and running?
Well, that depends on when we do it. You know, I mean, if we did it tomorrow, I'm sure the Meadowlands would be up in 3 weeks. I mean, I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it would be very, very fast.
How important is it that you do it on the ballot this year as opposed to 2016? And you mentioned Sweeney feels differently than you do on that. What have your...
Well, It's important that we do it, and I think it's important that everybody is in agreement in terms of this issue and moving this issue. As I stated before, this is something that leadership is going to have to decide. My preference, you've heard my preference on the issue, but my preference will have to be integrated into other people's thinking on this subject, and I said we're going to have to make the best decision based on the information and the need.
Would you be opposed to expanding the number of counties?
At this point, I think this is enough. At this point, this is more than enough.
And what about something like, even for the capital city of Trenton, which
I think this is enough at this point. We got to be very careful about how we proceed. And as I said, these 3 areas, no more than 3. That doesn't mean you're going to have 3. That means that no more than 3, and they were going to have to compete to have a proposal approved by the proper regulatory agency.
Can I just say one thing,
Sure.
if I may? When we talk about areas and we talk about where we're losing the market, and we're losing to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and we're losing to New York, mostly Yonkers, I mean, that's within distance of Bergen, Essex, and Hudson, North Jersey. I mean, we're closer than the people that are going outside to New York. So I think the strategy of placing them in North Jersey is recouping that market that's already going to New York City. So we're looking at, geographic locations where, as the Assemblyman said, the population is there. I go to the Sands once in a while because my daughter goes to Lehigh. I will tell you that everyone in the Sands that I talk to, you know where they're from? They're not from Pennsylvania. They're from New Jersey.
Right.
So.
But if I may, then why not limit it to 2, let's say, or 1?
This is no more than
That's going to be,
three.
but let me just say, that's going to be the decision of the state of New Jersey, not us. We're just opening it up for a possibility of 3, no more than 3. They could open 1 and not go any further. They could open 2 and not go any further. They could open none. It all depends upon what's submitted based on the guidelines that are going to be laid out.
How do the guidelines address jobs
Yeah.
in terms of
Yes,
right of
Brenda.
first refusal and dedication of jobs that were laid off people in Atlantic City?
I'm sorry, Brenda, do you want to?
Yeah, how would the legislation address jobs for people who were laid off in Atlantic City?
Well, I think that also can be done through enabling legislation. In other words, we don't want to get into an argument over what's going to be and what isn't going to be. This is just the beginning of a conversation. Once the voters understand what we're trying to accomplish, then the legislature will have to come up with the proper legislation to protect those people that lost those jobs and still want to work in the state. And I think we should be glad to have them because of their experience. And they've been through a lot there. There's tremendous challenges. I mean, just can you imagine a small town like that losing 8,000 to 10,000 people? That's families. Multiply it by 3 or 4. You're talking about 40,000 people affected, possibly, even more. So they are entitled, I think, to some consideration, more than consideration. As long as they're good employees and they have the experience, they should be able to have some preference for a position.
Creating jobs in Atlantic City is obviously a worthwhile endeavor, but why do you, the majority of people in this state, throughout the state, North Jersey, South Jersey, the central part of the state, what do you think is going to be the primary motivating factor for them to vote for this? Is it, you mentioned convenience gaming, I mean, do you think there will be a large, do you think that the idea of creating jobs in Atlantic City will resonate with people from Morris or Sussex?
Well, I think that everybody understands that the fiscal conditions of the state of New Jersey. We need good news. We need good news in the state of New Jersey, and we don't have very much good news at this time. So whether you live in Morris County or Monmouth County or Somerset County, you're still a citizen of the state. Aside from that, people are sentimental about Atlantic City. Whether they go there or not, they do not want to see Atlantic City perish. If they could see a way of creating jobs and revenue and also assisting and revitalizing a town that needs to be revitalized, I think they'll be convinced.
Yeah,
I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, sir. I'll just add to that. For folks outside of Atlantic City and for folks outside of the 3 counties in which we're proposing the casinos be built, they're also incentivized by the fact that, I mean, there's 8.9 million people in the state. 50,000 is not a small number. 20,000 direct jobs, but 30,000 indirect and ancillary jobs in services that are going to be vendors for the industry, which is why, and that they're going to come from every county in the state. So those additional indirect jobs are very critical as well. So the 50,000 jobs, as well as all of the services that are funded from the Casino Revenue Fund right now, the concurrent resolution proposes all of those same worthy causes, medical assistance, community-based senior programs, the disabled, housing programs, home-delivered meals, adult daycare for Alzheimer's patients, the list goes on and on. Senior citizens property tax freeze. All of these will continue to be funded from the revenues that come from the additional gross gaming revenues, which is why we're going with 3 and in these counties for high impact for high-impact attractions, where we're going to be able to attract and ensure the success of non-gaming amenities. We don't want low-impact slots-in-a-box type gaming like in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and the city. That's not going to create the jobs or the maximum potential revenue that we're looking for. It's gaming policy that has to be well thought out and prudent and make sure that we minimize competition to Atlantic City, but attract all of the consumers that are going out of state right now.
On the 20,000 direct jobs, I mean, of the 4 casinos that shuttered in Atlantic City, we've lost 10, right? So are these much bigger in scale or something? How are you going to have that many more jobs being created than what was lost in more casinos?
Well, you know, first of all, we don't know the side. We're guessing. Let's face it, we're guessing. We know there's going to be a lot of jobs, at least 10,000 or more. What Raj is talking about, if the project goes through in Jersey City, it's a major project. You could be talking about 5,000 jobs just there, okay, with all the other services that are going to be provided. So we may be off a little bit in terms of the actual number, but the fact is there's going to be a tremendous amount of jobs in addition to our economy in this area. There's no doubt about it. I mean, what it did for Atlantic City in 1978, I don't say we're going to replicate that, but it's going to be very close. It's going to be a big boost for the state of New Jersey.
Ralph, are you concerned, I know some of the critics have argued that this will put even more of a strain on the Atlantic City gaming market?
I think there is a strain on the gaming market right now, and I think our job is to direct, these casinos are going to have to attract customers that are really gone out of the state of New Jersey. As Valerie said, you go to the Sands or Yonkers, or you go to resorts, international resorts in Queens, it's all Jersey people. I mean, they're not going there now. They're going to Atlantic City not on an often basis. Years ago, they were going once a month, twice a week. That's over with. That monopoly is over. And all the reports that we read dictates that, you know, if things don't change, we may lose 2 more. We could lose 2 more. So the job, the mission is now transition. How are we going to do this? How are we going to conduct this transition? Everybody's talking about the transition. We got to provide a funding source. And the faster we do it, the better off Atlantic City is going to be. And the better, they understand they're going to be down to 4 or 5 casinos. But they're going to be a convention town. They're going to have other things that are going to attract people. And we're going to have to provide support for that. Because if it doesn't happen, it could take 20 years. It may never happen if we don't provide that funding.
Ralph, when are you physically going to introduce this?
It's in today. Yeah.
In order to realistically get this on the ballot in November, how fast do you need to move? What would be a realistic timeline?
We're going to rely on leadership to come to a decision on that. That's above our pay grade. We've kicked it off, and hopefully we're going to be able to get into some important dialogue with those people that make those decisions.
I mean, to get it on the ballot, August 3rd is the ballot printing deadline, right? But you do have to do some technical things before you do it. So when do you need to start? What's the drop dead date to get the process?
We got to move. If it happened this year, we have to do it this month. It has to lay on the desk for 20 days. Okay, there are hearings that have to take place, and then it has to be voted on by 3/5, by 48 in the Assembly, by August 3rd and in the Senate.
So this month or next?
Got to do June and July. That's it. Yeah.
All right, thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.